Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting a like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love, guys. Now today's first story comes from Alula from the Entitled People subreddit and says, I pay rent, so I own this house. Thought this would fit here. English is not my maternal language. Backstory, my parents used to own a house on a big land. When my older siblings went away for college, the house felt too big for our needs, so my parents decided to sell the house. But not all the land. They built a smaller house on part of the land they didn't sell. A few years after, we moved to a city 2 hours away and kept the house as a place to go during the summer. My parents decided to rent the house as it was well located and had a really nice view. Renting it meant that they could use the money towards the mortgage and taxes. Enter our Karen. Karen and her boyfriend rented the place so she could be closer to her work. From the start, my dad made it clear. The place was for rent and my parents planned on living in that house after retiring. At that time, both of them planned to work for at least another 20 years. They would of course notify Karen in advance when they wanted to take back the house so she would have plenty of time to find a new place. In return, they asked that she notify them in advance should she wish to move out so they could find a new renter. The lease also stated that my parents would have some of their things in a locked storage in the basement, as well as in a shed on the property, and that they would always call Karen before dropping by to get something out of storage, which was in the basement and connected by the garage, so they wouldn't even disturb Karen. For a few years, Karen was an okay renter. She paid the rent through a check each month. She smoked inside and didn't take care of the land, but my dad didn't make a fuss about it. Real trouble started after around 12 years. Every few months, Karen's checks would bounce. My dad would call her to ask about it. Karen would profusely apologize and rectify the situation. Then it became every other month, until it was every month. Finally, my dad had had enough and called her about the lease and the rent. During the call, Karen argued that since she had been paying rent for the past 12 years, the house was now hers. My dad was shocked since that came out of nowhere. He tried to explain to her that she was renting the place like they had agreed on since the beginning. Karen went on a bitch fit about how she had paid so much over the years and she was the one living there and taking care of the place, which she was not at all. Therefore, it should be hers. She threatened to take my dad to court. Now, where I live, there are many laws which protects the renter, and it can be a real bitch to deal with when you get a nasty renter. My dad hired a lawyer to make sure everything was in order. After meeting with Karen, where the lawyer was present, she realized she didn't have much of a case since all paperwork concerning the house was in my dad's name, and the original lease clearly stated that it was a rental. My dad offered her to stop renting, should she wish to after the whole debacle, but she wanted to stay in the house. He made her sign a new lease where it stated, again, that this was a rental and that she should not pay or cause trouble again. My dad would give her the shortest possible notice of eviction allowed by the law. Karen is still renting the house after almost 20 years. My parents are not close to retiring yet. Do hope it won't turn into a shit show when they decide to take back the house. Edit. The question. Why did your dad let us sign a new lease? Comes up a lot in the comments. I will say what I answered throughout the comments. I don't have the slightest clue why he would do that. As I was a kid much younger when this happened, I wasn't kept in the loop much. It was also not the reaction I would expect my dad to have, since he is respectful to others and expects the same in return. I do know the legal actions he took when she threatened to take him to court did protect himself from many future problems that might arise. I do appreciate all the concern and the advice, although I do think my dad had a good reason to keep her as a tenant from hell after everything that went down. Now, I agree with some of the commenters saying that, it's a bad idea to let her continue staying after that. And this may be just because I've watched one too many Nightmare Neighbors, Nightmare Tenants. But she sounds like she's going to be an absolute pain in the ass to get rid of. And, just extending this isn't a great idea. Because I think the entitlement will just ramp up over time. She already thinks she owns the place because she's rented it for 12 years. What's another 6 to 10 years going to do? It kind of sounded like your dad just wanted like the easiest option to just carry on as is because he just wants to crack on with life, which, you know, I get, but it does sound like it's going to be a nightmare. NT Engineer says, I would have never let her stay. Your dad is just asking for trouble when he wants to move her out. She will fight it and carry it out as long as she can until she gets removed physically, and probably will destroy the inside of the house. She already showed what type of person she is, and he should have just continued with the eviction process to get her out of the house. Care Bear Ninja Hair says, unless the lease agreement had strict verbiage that said it was a lease to own, I don't know why she thought she had a case. My second house I ever owned was a lease to own, and there was a legal contract that a percentage of my rent went to a trust to build up a down payment over 5 years, and I could offer to buy the place, which I did. I agree with others that he should have ended her lease as soon as legally possible. It sucks so hard that people get screwed over like this. Your dad sounds like a great guy. Another commenter says it took us a year to get our tenant out when we wanted to move back into our flat. He had lived there for around 15 years and my grandmother, who'd been handling all of it as we lived in another country, hadn't put the rent up in all of that time. So of course he wasn't going to leave easily. He knew that rent was now 10 times what he was paying. When he left, the flat was trashed and my dad had to spend a fortune on legal fees. But OP came in with her update 4 years later and says this is the update of a post from 5 years ago. Some people asked for an update in the comments, and there's been new developments in the last few months. The timeline. Since the beginning, there was a mutual agreement between Karen and my parents that they would both give a 6 months notice before she moved out, or my parents would like to take back the house. Last week of June, my dad received a phone call from a representative of Karen. Due to financial circumstances, she was giving a month's notice before moving out. My parents were surprised by the short notice, but didn't really mind it, as they were looking forward to taking back the place. Last week, July, Karen was set to move out, but she asked for a week extension as she couldn't find anybody to help her move. My parents agreed. She was now set to move out by August the 3rd. August the 4th, with the car all loaded up with essentials, dinnerware and cutlery, small furniture, we left for our first trip to the house. The plan was to look at the state of the place, clean a little bit and take measurements for the remodeling my parents are planning. As we get to the place, we notice a small sign in the driveway to advertise for a garage sale at the house. We figured she forgot to take it down. We were wrong. As we get to the house, we can see boxes and furniture through the windows. Cue the shocked Pikachu face as she answered the door. Turns out she hadn't moved yet and meant to call my dad to let him know. But of course, she never did. She clearly didn't expect us to drop by so soon after a supposed moving date. My parents were both extremely pissed, but they gave her an additional week in expectations of payments for the weeks she overstayed. August 18th. My parents received the confirmation that she left the week she was supposed to. They had a neighbor drop by to make sure her things were really gone. But we didn't have time to make the trip until a week after. We found the place in a much better shape than we expected. Of course, the place is not in perfect condition, as it clearly has the wear and tear of a place that's been lived in for years. It needs a good cleanup, some fresh paints in most of the rooms, and a lot of work on the land. There's also plans of remodeling a bit to make an additional room on the first floor so my parents don't have to go up and down the stairs all the time. Turning a new leaf over. So this ends the whole chapter. My parents got the summer house back years before they expected, and although the rental was difficult until the end, she mostly went away without all the trouble we all expected. My parents are happy to take back the place and are looking forward to all the projects they have for it. They have been almost every week to clean and sort through the things we have stored there. My dad did a fresh coat of paint in some of the rooms and they are looking for furniture. My brother went once and started to clear up some of the trees to get back the awesome view we used to have from the kitchen. My dad bought an old tractor to help with the yard work and is excited like a little boy with a new shiny toy. Would like to get the place clean and ready to hopefully spend Christmas camping there, as we most likely won't have a lot of furniture yet. Boss says, I was expecting this to be some sort of long and dragged out process where Karen gets the law involved and ultimately gets shut down. But this was nice and quiet. Govzilla says make sure they change all the locks, don't want her letting herself back in at some later date. Opie says absolutely sound advice. On our way back home the first day, we went, well, the day we actually made it inside the house,